Hello and welcome to A Critical Dragon, where I talk about narrative in film, television, and in books. And I am joined by my good friend and horrendous nemesis, Baron Philip Harkonnen Chase.
Oh dear. Does that make you, who does that make you? The Emperor, perhaps?
I,
Emperor
I'm
AP.
only one. I have Paul in my name,
Oh, that's true. Okay. I guess you do. Oh
and
no.
we're gathered here, Philip, because we wanted to talk about Dune Part Two by Denis Villeneuve.
Yes.
And because we had a chat previously about Part One,
We did
which
indeed.
which we both enjoyed. And as is usual, we talk about things, stuff that we enjoyed, and then went, oh well, scratch at that bit. But the first film was great, and I thought it'd be fun to chat about this one.
I'm looking forward to it very much because I did enjoy it thoroughly. Just visually spectacular. And there are some things I can, if I really want to, nitpick about. And I think a lot of them do stem from the fact that this is an adaptation. And when you adapt something from one medium to another, you lose some things and you gain some things. And that's logical. But it's a brilliant film. Loved it. I thought it was a great follow-up to the first. Aesthetically, just fantastic. And good storytelling, I would say. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about it.
And just like up front with everyone, I loved it. I probably had far fewer quibbles with this one than I had with the first one.
Yeah, you were picky on the first one. Oh, the music was too loud, and
Well, okay. On that point, there, there was only about one moment in this. I went to a different cinema this time,
Oh, that was smart. Yeah.
and it uh the balance seemed a lot better. Now it could, and I said this at the time, that it could have been the cinema I was in, that whoever was in the sound booth dialed it up to 11, just because they were a fan of This Is Spinal Tap. But
Right.
the cinema I was in this time, there was seemed to be a much better balance. So either the cinema got it right, or the mixing on whatever uh, digital
Or
thing.
or Denis Villeneuve watched our previous discussion and decided to roll it back a little. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure that's what it was. The Hollywood director tuned in to listen to the two of us talk about his film.
You never know. Although he failed to leave a comment, I think.
Oh, but I'm sure he liked and subscribed. You know,
That's the important part. Yeah.
but as it one of the things that I came out of the cinema and went, I thought this was brilliant. Um, because we are talking about the sound, there were certain points where they were using almost sort of subsonic, below the hearing level, but the sound was loud and you could feel it vibrating in your chest.
Huh.
And so you knew the sound was hitting you, and there was enough sort of audible sound so that you knew that it was associated with, but you felt the rumbling, and it became a really immersive experience.
Hmm.
And for anyone who's waiting for this to come out on streaming so they can see it at home, unless you have a massive surround sound system with every single speaker ever pointed at you, there is something about the cinema experience where they have that type of sound. It was incredible.
Yeah.
And it reminded me a lot of those theme park experiences where they think of it as an immersive experience and they try to engage different senses, as you're going through the visual thing. And I think that's the first time that I really experienced that and made note of it and went, yeah, this is incredibly. It was the perfect moment for it, because I think it was the sandworm riding,
Yeah.
just feeling that rumble.
Yeah, that of course that would be an appropriate moment. Now they just need the smell-o-vision, like you could smell Baron Harkonnen's mud bath, and bringing that scene alive.
I'm actually quite thankful that smell-o-vision doesn't exist, considering like some of the dystopian films I quite enjoy, and you go, they would smell pretty ripe.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like the guy who pooped in his steel suit and all that,
You 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 really had to go there.
Well, I think it recycles it or something, right?
Yeah, but Philip, you had to go there.
Sorry. Those suits are really tight too, man. Oh. So yeah,
Well,
I'll agree about that. The sounds, the visual, and I think where a lot of my praise and maybe some of my quibbles come in is the fact that because this is an adaptation, what they had to do was compress. They compressed time-wise, and that affected certain things. So we're doing full spoilers, everybody. So if you haven't read the
if
book,
I
or
remember, I will put spoilers in the title. If I don't remember, sorry.
your warning. So, but yeah, they compressed because in the book, several years go by, whereas this gives you the feeling of several months,
Yeah.
really. And certain characters obviously are affected by that. Aaliyah, for example, is character. It's like the Monty Python. The character Sir whoever will not be appearing in the film. Although she makes this kind of a dream-like cameo there for a moment, I guess. But yeah, that compression, I wasn't entirely satisfied with how rapidly it felt like Paul was able to win over the Fremen and was able to come into his own. I mean, I think I like the pacing better in the book in that sense, where it took years for Paul to get to this point. Where here it feels very rapid, like, and they had to do that. I understand that. I
Well,
feel like that was the best choice they could have made. But I don't know. I can see the wheels turning in your brain right now.
no,
So
it's in because if you think of the other two Dune adaptations that we've had, the 1984 Lynch and the what was it,
right.
2001 Sci-Fi Channel miniseries.
Yeah, and Aaliyah appears as a little girl in
Yeah.
the 1984 one. Yeah.
But in the 1984 one, they do a montage sequence. So essentially almost like time lapse of, Paul leads this and you get the voiceover from Irulan saying, and he begins his holy war because they're attacking, and it cuts to an action sequence montage to show the Fedaykin attacking the spice harvesters and starting this whole campaign, and then Raban yelling and cutting backwards and forward to show that whole buildup of tension, that this went on until it really attracted the attention of the emperor and the baron, and then we sort of jump back into basically where Villeneuve has it here. Like you go back into the story at this point, that was kind of a montage sequence to deal with. Yeah, nothing happens really for a couple of years.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I, for me, the collapse of the time to accelerate that timeline,
Right.
I didn't mind that at all, because the focus very much of Villeneuve's story is similar, but in a very key way distinct from what Lynch did, which was focus on Paul as central character, Paul as central protagonist, Paul as main character. But, and here's the distinction, Villeneuve has Paul as an anti-hero, Lynch had Paul as a hero.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
think that makes a huge difference. And when we think of the weirdness of Alia and the preborn in general, and you see it in Children of Dune, and Dune Messiah, and then in Children of Dune, that it would be another character. And yeah, you could have got a kid actor to run around. But in the Lynch one, again, it was a wee bit weird. And you go, right. So it detracts from the focus on Paul because it's a new character being added in and a new dynamic.
Right.
So I didn't actually mind that, because it concentrated the focus. And I think one of the things that we forget when people used to talk about Dune as one of the great unadaptable books, because
Mm.
Jodorowsky famously, infamously failed in his adaptation because it was going to be like a 60-hour movie or something. Um, the Lynch version was a very much hero's journey, white savior narrative, which went against the grain of what Herbert was writing and excised a whole load of stuff and was really truncated. Then we had the sci-fi version, which had a lot of this the correct or a lot of the scenes in it, but again was jumping past and skipping over a whole load of stuff because it didn't have the depth of storytelling, even if it was superficially more faithful.
Hmm.
I think Villeneuve's approach of going, no, we're going to cut away a whole load of things and we're going to reshape it because this is our narrative focus. This is our narrative through line. And we are concentrating on these things. And yes, it is then sacrificing and losing part of the book, but it is going to produce a stronger, more definitive film.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
ultimately, he's producing a film. Yes, it is an adaptation, but it has to work as a film. And for his vision, he went, "This is the film I want to make." And I think the themes that he brought out and the themes that he focused on and the aspects that he focused on, A, are very much drawn from the book, and I think come across brilliantly in the film. So much so I was actually really surprised and delighted
Mm.
to with a couple of aspects of the ending.
Yeah. So I think he's drawing not only from his knowledge of the book, but the series as a whole. And I agree with you when you say that Villeneuve's presentation of Paul is more of an anti-hero, and you can see this struggle playing out in the course of this film. But I see it especially in the increased role that Villeneuve has given to Chani, because he's made Chani into the skeptic. He's made Chani into the one at the end who's not happy with the way things have gone. Obviously, for personal reasons, like you're just dumping me for this princess, okay? But up because she also sees what Paul is becoming, and that's the most important pair of eyes there. She's the one who refuses to kneel. She's the one who refuses to go along with this, and ultimately leaves and gets on her worm at the end of the film. But it's her increased role from the book because it is definitely an increased presence of Chani. And I love that decision. I absolutely love that decision. I think Villeneuve has done a really clever thing here by making Chani more important and giving her that role of skeptic, of the one who's seeing Paul. Look, you're going in this really dangerous direction. Everybody else is Muad'Dib, and so it's I like that a lot. I like what that difference, if we're focusing on the differences right now.
Yeah, and I think in the book, I think a reader has to work quite hard to elevate Chani in the novel because she is ancillary to Paul. She is attached to Paul. She is now doesn't mean that she isn't an interesting character, and it doesn't mean that she isn't important, but her relevance is always in relation to Paul. And their relationship is that kind of it was predestined. They were all destined to be lovers, and it Villeneuve gives it time to breathe. He makes it feel much more human. And I think for the modern audience in the cinema watching this, how many how many people complain about insta love as this trope that they hate? That
Right.
there was we could see the attraction between Chani and Paul. We could see that they were attracted to one another. How much of that is because they're basically the two only people that age who are kind of hanging around? It's but there was this attraction, but simple attraction isn't enough for the depth of their bond. And we see that bond increase and we see it deepen and strengthen. And the moment when they're sitting on the sand together looking out and sharing that moment, there isn't a huge amount of dialogue where, oh, how do I love thee? Let me count the ways. It's not that. It's the quiet building of a relationship, which
Yeah.
is something that, while less dramatic, feels much more true. It's quite often how a lot of our own relationships are built. So it humanizes Paul in that moment. It humanizes the alienness of the Fremen in that moment and makes us identify with these two people who are part of different cultures. They're trying to get along. Suddenly it makes Paul and Chani's story less of a they were always destined to be lovers because of fate kind of thing and
Mm.
makes it into a very human story.
Yeah.
And then with Paul's decision, because because of his love and attraction to Chani and the glimpses that he'd been getting of this potential future where millions and billions were going to die, you know,
Right.
we could get on to talking about the golden path another time, but um, he he is reticent to take that up. He is reticent to lean into the prophecy that has been falsely embedded into their religion
Right.
because he knows it's a manipulation. He knows it would actually harm the society, that he would be assuming this thing under false pretenses because it's not real. But if he does it, he can make it real, but then he's imposing on this culture. And this is the culture of the woman he loves and the culture that she wants to protect. So
Right.
there's a wonderful tension built up in
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah.
And when, it, I have to admit, it's unfortunate because of some of the theme stuff in it that the life of Brian exists. Because anytime we're talking about messianic figures and messianic stories and people refusing it, you can just imagine like Chani looking great. He's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy. Um, but and it's because Life of Brian was such a resonant critique of religious extremism. And of course, that's part of what is being explored in this film. It's not
Right.
an exploration of religion and faith, it's an exploration of extremism and fundamentalism that has taken a religious belief to a fervor, to an extreme point, and
Yeah.
how that can be manipulated for ill or for good. But it's an examination of the power of religion to override, to whip up fervor. And be we religious or not, we have seen this time and time and time again throughout history.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It,
Well, it's
it
interesting because you have the figure of Jessica in here, who is Paul's mother and obviously is concerned for him, and she's a Bene Gesserit, and she seems the most. And I'm, we can talk about her motives because she's being protective, a protective mother. She's obviously on the side of her deceased lover because they were never actually married, Duke Leto, and all of that. But she manipulates. She consciously manipulates, knowing about the seeded prophecies and everything else on this world, and even head south to, she's Paul's John the Baptist in a way. She goes and spreads the word and tells everybody about Muad'Dib, and he is resisting, early on, like, no, if I go south, I know what's going to happen. A lot of people are going to die, and he resists, and finally, when he goes there, it's like he's swept up into it, and he kind of embraces it. I think at a certain point, and he gets carried away with it. But he does try. Well, I think so. I mean, when that is very staged. That the whole scene where he does the knife fight and eventually says to Irulan, "You're going to be my bride." It's very political.
yeah, but I don't think he is swept up by. I think he is. It's not that he is swept up by because
he
that
knows what he's doing. Yeah,
yeah, he is in control. He has made a conscious choice and
yeah,
he is
fair
going to
enough.
do this.
Yeah.
And therefore, he is going to do it to the fullest. It's not a half hearted attempt. It's not that, oh, events are now out of his control. He went, I know what these events are because we saw this with his prescience. And he said, I can see this. I see where this is going. And in that vision, those little glimpses, there was a lens flare that consistently fell straight down the middle of the screen, like the
Mm,
golden path that obviously Leto II talks about later on. Paul is seeing that, and he talks about, oh, I see this vision, and there's a slim path, and each time it recalls that lens flare that Villeneuve constantly and consistently put through the middle of the screen, down through the middle of the screen.
yeah.
Paul embraces it and goes, well, if I am on this path, I must do this. And so
All the
that
way. Yeah.
that sequence when he meets with all of the Fremen, and you hear Jessica going, "No, don't push! Like you're going too hard. You're pushing them too hard." And it's like, but Paul's going, "I." You can almost hear his counter argument, which is, "I am not you. I will do this my way." This
Yeah.
is how I see it. This is how I'm going to do it because I am not you. I am not the Bene Gesserit. I am the Kwisatz Haderach. I am this other being, and my
Mm.
way is different, and I can see it, and you can't.
And he breaks with not only the way she sees it, but even tells the Fremen, "No, we're doing it my way. I'm not going to kill Stilgar. Why would you break
Your
your
knife
knife
before battle.
before the battle, right?" So he's redefining everything there, and he's using his his aura and authority in order to do that. So yeah, I agree. He is doing it very consciously, I guess. That's the better way to put it, is that when he finally gives in and says, "All right, I'm going to do this," he's really doing it. Yeah.
And I think that was, I think, potentially one of the reasons why I liked this part more than I liked part one. Was in part one, Paul was very reactive. He was quite passive. Things were happening around him.
Naturally. I mean,
But
yeah.
naturally, given the story, and again, it was the first part of a story. Like it,
Right.
I am totally aware of that. I am forgiving of that. And as a complete thing, you can see he moves from being this child or noble child who is being influenced by events, that events are going on that he has no control over, he is constantly reacting to, and other people are making the decisions, to his growth to the end where he has become tyrant, and he's like, no, I will shape the galaxy to my will. And
Right.
it's that anti-hero's journey that
Mm.
he essentially has become the Dark Lord.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
um
That's definitely the
and that,
presentation.
but that was one of the reasons why I really enjoyed this, because it shows him coming into his own, and even that refusal to initially do it, that refusal to go to the south because of what it entailed, and it's,
Yeah.
um that hesitation, and then coming to the realization, no, I have to do something, because even not choosing now is a choice,
Right.
and every choice has repercussions. And I love the fact that his agency increases and increases and increases until he ultimately becomes the only one with true agency.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, in the books, and they do this in the first part of the first film as well, and in part of this film, it's really the relationship between Jessica and Paul that is so fascinating, and you see her, kind of putting him in this role, even from the very beginning of deciding to have a boy, right? She has essentially decided this fate for him, right? And she's got her ideas too. She's got her agenda, and what you see here is Paul finally saying, "No, Mom, I'm doing it my way now." And it's that moment of seizing the reins, and uh, but it's frightening. It's presented in such, oh, he's baby's grown up. Yeah.
yeah, our little boy's all grown up, and he's gone off to conquer the world and the galaxy, and launch a jihad against billions. Oh,
Oh.
so proud. Don't you hate
I
it when
mean,
they leave the nest to wipe out billions?
yeah.
That day. Um, but that was another aspect of what Villeneuve focused on and emphasized in this that I really appreciate. When we read Dune now, we look at it and you go, the Bene Gesserit are incredibly sinister, but
Sure.
because it's sort of Irulan as narrator, a lot of that is toned down in the book. Like, you pick up how sinister and how manipulative they are from the things that you are told, but we're not really showing it to the same extent.
Uh-huh.
Villeneuve kind of dials that up a bit because we see Jessica and the guy, uh, the Reverend Mother Gaius Mohim. I always forget her surname.
That sounds close anyway.
I've mispronounced it. Sorry, but they are incredibly manipulative. It is an incredibly manipulative and sinister organization. Like, it's eugenics. It's the breeding of the ultimate genetic being,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they use people and lives and houses and planets
Like,
as,
what's her name shows up to breed with Fade Routha in the film. I mean, it's presented in that exact way, right?
and even the suggestion that the emperor got rid of the Atreides because the Atreides were becoming too intractable for the Bene Gesserit to effectively manipulate. So they orchestrated the downfall of thousands, if not millions, of people. Like, that's incredibly sinister. And the fact that Villeneuve decides to elevate that in importance in the text by showing how Jessica becomes that. She
Right.
becomes a reverend mother. She becomes the Bene Gesserit. She
Mm.
uses those techniques that she has always had access to. She wasn't just a loving mother. Yes, she loves her son, but she's also one of the most skilled political manipulators in the galaxy. She
Yeah.
is an incredible hand to hand fighter. She thinks about things strategically. She could be an assassin. All of these things, that's who Jessica is. We know this from the text, but Villeneuve shows it to us. And I think it's basically one line that gets that across so strongly to the audience. And it's when she says, oh, we need to build support for Paul. We'll start with the weak ones, the ones that fear us.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
She's looking at children then. Yeah.
and that comes across as incredibly sinister. And I
Yeah.
think with that one line, Villeneuve actually gets across what is in the book about how sinister and how manipulative the Bene Gesserit actually are. As much as we want to love Lady Jessica, as much as we want to love Paul and Jessica and the Atreides and see them as heroes, Villeneuve is cutting all of that away and going, but look at what's in the material. Remember, it's being told from a certain perspective, and remember what this person has done and is responsible for and will do.
Right.
And I thought that was a wonderful way to get to the truth that Herbert was exploring. Even
Mm.
if he doesn't come to a definitive conclusion about it, he was exploring it and showing it to the audience. Because it's in a more truncated form, it has to be more specific. It has to be a bit more, at least a bit more direct, because
Yeah.
you don't have 60 hours to tell the story.
Right.
And I think he got it across so incredibly well.
Yeah, and the matter of faith, and frankly, the actors really contribute to this as well. What's his name playing Stilgar? Brilliant job. And oh gosh, why can't I remember his name? Well, anyway,
Javier Bardem played Stilgar.
yes, of course, Javier Bardem. And then you have just people believing in Jessica after she drinks the water of life, and of course, it affects Aaliyah as well. And she's having this little dialogue with Aaliyah all the time in the womb, and she's saying, "Well, she says that, no, no, no." How does anybody know that this the fetus is talking right to her? She could just make up anything she wants. Well, according to Aaliyah, actually,
Well,
um,
I'm going to
it,
say, wait, is that any more or less believable than God spoke to me?
Yeah,
And
that's what I mean. Yeah. So this is the portrayal of faith in here is really fascinating, I think.
and
And
there was one line that I think a lot of people have picked up on is when it's when Paul had said that, oh, no, I'm not the, is it El Mahdi, I'm not the
oh
prophet.
yeah, see,
And
he's so humble.
so
Yeah.
and the reason I love that is it shows that,
Yeah.
again, it's the when faith is taken to an extreme,
Right.
it's things are twisted to fit the faith.
Right.
And
But
it's not stating what has happened.
by denying that he's a savior, he is the savior. Yeah. Yeah.
So it denies Paul's agency. It denies Paul as a being, a rational being. It denies the reality of what just was said because the faith dictates it should be interpreted in a certain way. So the faith is bending reality. And then what we have at the end, of course, is Paul taking the position where he is going to bend reality to that faith. He is going to remake reality in the vision of that faith rather than the faith deluding or blinding or altering someone's perception. He's physically going to reshape the galaxy to match the faith. And I
Right.
thought that was, again, about the power of these messianic figures, about the power of these dictators, about the power of directing what faith can be and sharpening it into a weapon and tool that there's a warning here about how people weaponize faith, twist faith.
I'll tell you what, it is powerful when a large group of people believe in the same thing fervently, and to control it is it's frightening what a person can do with that kind of power, to control that energy, that belief, that focus. It'd be like controlling a sandworm, right? And being way more powerful than you are, and you're hanging on to it with a couple, hooks and ropes, and you think you're guiding this thing, but it's big and it can do a lot of damage. So it's a, kind of a frightening thing to have that portrayed there.
And of course, and I think drawing the analogy between the sandworm writing and what we're talking about is exactly, why it is such a striking visual in the film. It is, we
Yeah,
are meant to draw that parallel because is Paul firmly in control, or is he barely holding on with these specific tools in place to try and steer it in different directions? And
exactly.
that is that is a really brilliant point, Philip. I'm glad you brought that up because at the end, when we see the Fremen, thousands of Fremen running onto these ships, the beginning of the jihad.
Yep.
That, I think, is the really neat contrast to the 1984 film. In the
Mm.
1984 film, he's crowned emperor, he's wearing the robes, and then suddenly it starts raining on Arrakis because it's a miracle, and
Yeah.
you know, and it's this whole very triumphant scene. And you go, no, what's being emphasized here is this is the beginning of a new tyrant.
And this is some bad stuff that's about to go
And
down. Yeah.
this is what all the way through the film up to a certain point Paul has been arguing, I don't want to do this. If I do this, a really bad thing is going to happen. If I choose to go south, a bad thing is going to happen. If I take up this mantle, this is going to cause death and misery on a level that people do not understand. Well, and Gurney saying, well, but you need to avenge your father, because Gurney sees it in a very simple, straightforward, surface level, tit for tat, Canley, the destruction of the houses, a political matter. Jessica sees it as, well, you need to take control and get power, and you need to do these things because that's going to secure our place. It's going to secure our family. It's going to secure our future. And, we can do it. She's seeing it again as this political maneuver. And Paul's going, I see further than both of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
This isn't just the Fremen. This isn't just Arrakis. This isn't just about my father. This isn't just about my future. This is about the future of the galaxy. And you're all pushing me to this. And then when he embraces that and takes control of it, that's why we end on basically him going, told you. This, you said you wanted this. You said you wanted me to do this. You wanted me to do all of this. This is the result. I have been trying to tell you. This is what we're doing. I've accepted it. Now you have to live with it. And
Yeah.
ending on that, not ending on the high note of Paul being the great and glorious hero, leader, messiah, leading. No, it ends on that note of,
Oh boy.
oh, shit.
Yeah. Gurney gets his little tit for tat moment, even he gets to kill Robin in this film, right?
It's,
Just
I have the Harkonnens were, again,
let's talk about the Harkonnens, right? Yeah.
um, because again, when you're translating it onto screen, it's a very visual medium. Like cinema is primarily visual and secondary audio
Mm.
as a medium. Big screen, and yes, you have speakers, but it's primarily visual, secondary audio. TV is, it's almost flipped
Mm.
because
Mm.
much smaller picture, so you're dependent on the audio a lot more. Audio is much more important. And so there was one of my issues, obviously, with the first one, was I didn't really enjoy what they did with the Baron because it was very much Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Which I think they have acknowledged like explicitly. Yeah, I'm basing this like Skarsgård said, I'm doing this off of Marlon Brando here. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just when you were watching it and you go, it's a great Marlon Brando impression.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Is there any chance you could have done Baron Harkonnen instead? But again, Skarsgård, he's great, and but the changes to the Harkonnens, because in the books they have the bright red hair.
Right. And here
That's
everybody's bald.
and everyone's but
As
they have
much
the
as
bright
it
red.
sucks, as much as it sucks to work for the Harkonnens, because like Fade Ralph just like, here, I need to test my knife, and kills the lady next to that's like the classic bad guy thing to just kill your lackeys left and right. But the worst occupation among the Harkonnens has to be hairdresser.
You just get one of those waxing things. But one of the things in the books, obviously, they had the bright red hair, and of course, Lady Jessica is known for her bright red hair. So there's all of this.
Right,
There's all of this linking being done early on, which
right.
obviously in this film, where it's revealed that Jessica is actually the Baron Harkonnen's daughter.
Where'd she get her hair?
Well, because she didn't live on Gidi Prime, and maybe it's there's something in the air.
Ah, okay.
The air is full of nair,
Nair air. Okay.
nair air. But and so when that reveal happens in the book, you're like, oh, in this, although like it has less of an impact when you already know it's coming.
Yeah.
But it was harder to signal that, and it does come as I think quite a bit of a shock to they're like, but what? But it
Yeah.
was odd because in the book it's foreshadowed. You see those little
It
links.
was a little, I have to say, a little anticlimactic for me in this film. And maybe because of what you're talking about. But there's a moment when Paul confronts her because he's figured it out, and he's like, "Why didn't you tell me?" She's, well, I didn't know until I did the water thing myself. He's like, "Oh, all right," you know. And then it comes up one more time when he kills him and says, "Oh, hey, Grampy," and then die like an animal. So, you know,
But even in that, it's for Paul at that stage. And again, I think other people will probably have different opinions about this, but
yeah,
obviously Alia kills the Baron in the book,
right.
but Paul killing him and treating it almost as an aside, he's moved beyond that. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
he did this because he had to, but it is perfunctory. It is not. It is not the culmination of something. It's not this grand thing. It's not this. Oh, it's been destined. He's now operating on the galactic scale. He's
And
like,
he's been stripped of power already, the Baron. He's been literally cut from his power. And, you know,
but he's crawling toward the throne. And
yeah.
I love that symbol. Like he's crawling toward the throne. Paul just walks up, knifes him, and walks off. And that casual dismissal of the petty politics that had been
Huh.
going on. That you see, that's what I thought tied into Paul going, no, I am now operating on a different level. This stuff, and like even his proposal to Irulan, like, and you will give me your daughter's hand. It's fait accompli. Like it's already done, and I have to do this, and it's perfunctory. There's none of this grand gesture stuff
Right. Except for the
because
duel with Fade Routha that happens.
and here we will have one of my quibbles.
Ah, good. Mine too, because as much as I loved the choreography of it and how it really was visually amazing, stunning, like the rest of the film. A lot of it was stunning. There were aspects of it that I felt like, oh wait, he stabbed Paul in the guts. Okay. He stabbed him pretty thoroughly there. And then later when they stab each other, Paul is stabbed in the shoulder and he manages to poke Fade Ralph at the same time. I just felt like, okay, just one or two too many stabs going on here, for me to feel like, I mean, obviously they're amping up the tension, or that is the attempt at least, perhaps. But I almost wish they hadn't done that. But whatever. I don't know. What was your problem with the scene?
Well, obviously, like in the books, Phaedra is very much the other side of the coin to Paul. They
Right.
they are two sides of the same coin. And had Fade been on Arrakis and drunk the water of life, and had been trained in the Bene Gesserit ways by someone, he could have been who Paul is now. That
Yeah.
we're meant to see them as the sort of the
Well,
opposites of
Bene
each other.
Gesserit are always, they planted many seeds, as they keep saying, right? And
And so I get that they are meant to mirror each other, and therefore, as a matchup,
right,
they're meant to be of similar skills. But what we see of Fade is he's used to fighting drugged people in an arena.
right.
Oh, you master duelist, you. Those people who can barely walk straight, can't see properly, and are swinging wildly while you wear a shield. Hmm. And it's my own issue because in the book, when Paul first fights, is it Janus, the Fremen,
Jamis, yeah, yeah.
and the other Fremen remark that Paul is cruel, and
Oh,
Jessica's like,
because he doesn't kill him right away. Yeah, yeah. They
why?
think
And
he's
it's
toying with him. Yeah,
they think he's toying with him because each time he gets in to do the cut, he slows down the blade. And you're like, and why is that? Because
shield.
he's used to fighting with the shield where the slow blade penetrates the shield. And so Paul has had to learn to fight without shields
Right,
and change his fighting style. But Paul basically was absolutely phenomenal. He's Bene Gesserit trained. He's now trained and been at war with the Fremen. He is constantly fighting and training. He is at his peak. Fade, for all that he is cool and cruel, fights people with a shield. So, and
right.
now, admittedly, his opponents don't have them because he likes to have an unfair advantage. But in that fight in the throne room, you would think that now that Paul has leveled up his power level, I hate that terminology. Let me rephrase. Now that
Okay,
Paul has been training with the Fremen and done all of these things and become an even better knife fighter, he was trained by Gurney and by Duncan.
right.
He's been training with the Fremen. He has been engaged in constant warfare. It should have been a slam dunk from the first moment that Faye draws his blade. It should have just been, and I would have, while it would have been anticlimactic, and I think Villeneuve quite rightly looked at that and went, okay, that might have been logical, but that's incredibly anticlimactic, and people would riot. Like this was a brilliantly choreographed and
Yeah.
arresting scene, and it was a great action sequence, and it was full of drama, and yet I was going, Paul should have had him in an instant.
Mm,
And even if it had been Paul foresaw an element, and that's where he saw, oh well, if I do that, I get stabbed. Foresee, and then it sort of cuts back, and he just then walks up. So if we could almost have seen part of the fight until Paul gets stabbed, and then Paul sort of comes to, looks up, so he just walks up and goes bang, and stabs him. Again,
yeah.
that would have worked for me, but I think a lot of people would have gone, oh, well, that's a fake out death. And, oh, we hate that dream sequence stuff. We want to see real stakes. And you're like, yeah, Paul was playing through the variations in his head. But like you get stabbed in the guts. And, oh, yeah, but I still win. And then afterwards, it's, oh, yeah, I just got to pull these knives all the way out
Yeah.
of my body. And, oh, yeah, everything's fine.
All
It's
right. So when can we have the wedding now? Yeah.
just a flesh wound. Come back and I'll
Right.
bite your ankles off. Again, Monty Python. Um,
Yeah.
so I get like I did look at that and go, how is Fade getting so lucky?
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, he kind of, okay. I think that Villeneuve attempted to show us that Fade is more dangerous than people assume him to be in that arena fight when he did dispatch the one guy who wasn't drugged. And he even got rid of his shield to say, all right, uncle, you want to test me? All right, fine. I'm up for this. Right. So he's proved his mettle sort of in the arena.
hang on a second. A guy who's been in prison and in shackles and in chains for months and hasn't been able to stretch or exercise properly, hasn't been fed properly, and is weak and disoriented. Yeah. Okay, so they didn't drug him as well.
Right.
What a fair fight.
Okay, point proven. I was just trying to help Villeneuve a little bit there. Point proven.
No,
Yeah,
but you're right.
yeah.
You're right. Like
That was an
Fade,
attempt at least. What did you think of them doing that in black and white, by the way? I thought that was kind of cool.
I like the transition to black and white. That when they are outside, whatever way that their sun works, it bleaches all color, and it was a very cool idea. I
Yeah.
did find it a little glaring, because
Uh-huh.
it wasn't black and white in traditional black and white,
Right.
where you'd have grayscale. It was, I think someone had said something about them filming it with like an infrared camera.
Oh, really? Interesting. This is
Uh,
very chiaroscuro, very, light and dark. Yeah. Yeah.
and it gets across the stark, brutal reality of Gidi Prime. It gets across the stark, brutal reality of the Harkonnens. Like he was
Yeah.
very much leaning into that. And again, a lot of it visual iconography as a form of storytelling. And Villeneuve has been doing this throughout. So like I like that. I thought it was a very interesting choice. I'm glad the whole film wasn't shot that way.
Yeah, yeah. Oh no, I wouldn't have enjoyed that. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, do you want to hear my second quibble?
Of course I do.
I was a little let down, just a little bit, by the Emperor. Um,
Oh, Christopher Walken. Yeah.
that is the worst Christopher Walken impression I
Oh,
have
it's the best I could do
ever
in the
heard.
moment. I should have rehearsed it. I'm sorry.
Right, you know what? What? Once we finish recording, you can sit there, practice for a bit, record it, send it to me, and I will edit it in over that.
I can't. I can't. It'll be just as bad. So
The reason I am disappointed, not because Walken's performance was bad, it
I
just,
thought it was pretty good, actually. Yeah.
but for Shaddam, the emperor of he's just this guy guy in a bathrobe sitting in the background. You know, it's almost like he's retired, and it's, oh, am I still running the galaxy?
I mean,
Oh,
that's kind of the point, though, isn't it? Isn't he supposed to be a bit like that? And he doesn't do all that much in the book either, really.
but and again, part of this is my own expectations. What I wanted to see, what I expected to see, and Villeneuve subverting this, fair enough. But Kaitan, the palace that it has all of these passages and the big throne room and the excess, and
Yeah.
he is this power and he doesn't care about it. He's not, to have him be that sort of doddering person surrounded by all of that.
I
I
kind of
thought
like that,
I
actually.
thought would have been very, very impressive. But as it is, like he's sitting in a little garden, or you go, what
Um,
did you film this in the local park? Like,
huh. Okay. I
and
hear you.
what I wanted was the juxtaposition of that frail human emperor against
Right.
the edifice of what
Okay. Okay.
the
Yeah. Okay.
emperor is,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
the symbols of empire,
Yeah. Yeah.
of what House Carino is, and then you have this big, oh, the emperor is going to be really impressive, and then having the little old man in it. I would have gone, yeah, that's that would have worked for me, but so I was a little disappointed in that. Although I did like Irulan, Florence Pugh.
Yeah. No, she was good. She was very good as a Bene Gesserit as well. But yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, the emperor is the I so what I was agreeing with was the fragility of the emperor as a person and representing in a sense in his body the corruption of the whole political system. That here you have this kind of fragile little bony worm-like creature who's supposed to be this magnificent wielder of power and all of that, and it's really just this fragile old guy, really. But you're right. It would have been neat to have more majesty, around him, which is supposed to, contribute to the illusion that the power resides in this person, right? So yeah, I hear you there. It could have been a little more splendiferous, I guess.
Or
But
and I think a lot of people would say yes, but that would have been too obvious. That would have been too blatant. And we go like on the online, yeah, it would have been. It would have been a very obvious
well, for
contrast.
a film with such visual spectacle, I think it would have been fitting, though.
Yeah, I think it would have fitted with the aesthetic and the style that he was going for. Plus,
Yeah.
also, it's not exactly like some of the symbolism in this film wasn't you weren't being hit over the head with it.
It's not that subtle. Yeah. It's
It's
not that subtle.
it's he's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy.
Yeah. So, well, were there any other points that we wanted to bring up on in this?
I thought the exploration of the power of religion, the power of a Messiah, and how that, because we are told from the beginning it was a colonial plant. It is a
Yeah.
fake prophecy that this has always been about manipulating an indigenous population to steal their resources and keep them controlled. That
Yeah.
there's so much of that about the colonial critique is
Spice being
incredibly
a
powerful.
spice being a metaphor for oil, really. Yeah.
Or, you could say spice and talk about the pepper
Or spice itself. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
silk. We can look at any commodity that has been ripped out of a country by a colonial power. And
Right.
then looking at this and going, this is not about freeing the Fremen. This is about the Fremen getting their opportunity to be the boot on the galaxy's neck.
Right.
And how in in crushing and keeping down a population, that their natural feeling is to want to flip it so
Mm.
that they can be the oppressor, not to be free from oppression, but to be free from oppression in order to punish those that oppress them. And the
Right.
danger of that circular narrative, the
Yep.
danger of that self-perpetuating cycle of violence.
Yep.
And I thought that that's the sort of thing that I was getting from it, that I really appreciated, because it wasn't just, oh, aren't the Fremen cool warriors? Oh, isn't Paul awesome? Which
Well,
is,
it's really reinforced with Chani turning her back on the whole thing at the end, isn't it? Yeah.
and that's what I was leading up to.
Uh-huh.
So symbolically,
Yeah.
how do we get where the future of the Fremen is?
Mm.
And Chani, the representation of the Fremen, the most human of the Fremen that we know, because Stilgar, although we know him, we like him, it's a fabulous performance. He's a wonderful character. He's
Flatter
brilliant,
character. It's a flatter character. Yeah.
but he's a true believer, and
Yeah.
he doesn't see Paul. We have seen Chani. She is a person. She humanizes the Fremen, and
Right.
she sees through Paul in that moment where everyone else is seeing the emperor or seeing Muad'Dib or seeing the prophet, the Messiah, the
Yep.
ruler of the galaxy. She sees Paul and she sees what he is doing.
Mm.
And in that moment, she is our surrogate to go, you are not the hero. I am not part of this. And she
Yeah.
turns her back on him. And for me, again, with the shot of the Fremen running off to run roughshod over the galaxy, but Chani walking away, that divergent path, which is so important in Dune Messiah and Children of Dune,
Yep.
and also much later on in God Emperor, that this this is incredibly important for this story, and it's incredibly important that people don't think that all Fremen are these brainwashed religious zealots who will just blindly follow anyone.
Hmm.
Chani is their symbol that no, some of them will see the truth and they will see through this. Now, they may still join in the jihad, they may still join in this holy war,
Yeah.
or they might reject it. But we're given depth and complexity to the Fremen that is not quite as deep in Herbert's first book.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah.
What about you? Any thoughts that we didn't talk about Margot Fenring?
Oh
And
yes, the Bene Gesserit, who gets herself pregnant with Fade Raufa in the film. Yeah. Um, yeah.
absolutely captivating performance.
Sorry.
I thought it was a stunning performance because
Uh-huh.
it, she and Austin Butler um, play played off each other so well that they were absolutely arresting to watch on screen
And
in
first
that.
she was following him, and then he ends up somewhere he doesn't even realize, and she's doing the mind thing, the Bene Gesserit mind thing with him, and he's like, "Where am I?"
And then we get
She,
the replication of the Gom Jabbar scene from
yes,
where everything about that, and again emphasizing that Fade is Paul, that they're two sides of the same coin, and now
yep,
she's going to bear the another female Harkonnen.
they are hedging their bets.
So
Yeah.
like all of that was just so wonderfully done, and I wanted to point that out because I thought some of the performances just were were really good, and there was
Great.
nothing in this. Like my two quibbles, I wanted Shaddam to be in a much grander setting to contrast with how fragile Walken plays him.
Right.
And the other was it was a cool knife fight, but just within the diegesis as it was shown, why did Paul find it so tough, and why did he get stabbed a bunch of times? Like it was,
It was played for tension and aesthetics more than for logic.
yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it's what they do with fight choreography. We see that the fight is going one way and then it goes the other way, and there are stakes, and oh, are they going to lose? It's playing peaks and troughs of drama and emotion, and you get that. It's storytelling in a fight.
I mean, it tells you if you contrast that with the one with Sting. I mean, it's like Sting is going, and he's dancing around and I mean, it's a kind of I mean, I love the 80s, don't get me wrong, but the difference in how filmmaking has evolved,
Mm.
they really love their crazy acrobatic fight scenes now, it's incredible. Just watch one scene after the other. It's quite a contrast, really.
And yeah, completely different styles and approaches. But if those are my two quibbles about the film, because the time collapse, the excision of that, dude.
That had to happen. That had to happen. Yeah.
Well, it didn't have to happen because they kept it in the 1984 Dune. They just did a montage in the middle of it to show rapid passage of time, and
Right.
everyone loves a montage.
Uh, that's why I was making that face. But okay.
Rocky has a montage where you see him and he's starting off, and then by the end of it we know that time's passed and now he's full of skill. And what was it in was it Team America World Police where they actually do the song about
I
having a
mean,
montage?
that pretty much sums up montages nowadays, I think. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they could have done that montage. They could have done the skip forward in time. They
Yeah.
there are lots of different ways that Villeneuve could have done it. They didn't
Right.
have to collapse
Didn't have
time.
to, but I actually am glad overall they did it. I think they lost some things in the process, but they gained some things, and it makes sense for the story that Villeneuve wanted to tell here, I think.
And ultimately, like the most significant change was Alia remaining in the womb
Right.
and not killing the Baron at the end. Right. Okay. Like fine. The Baron still is dead, and we still got Alia, and we still got these sort of communications. Like, she was still present, just in a different way. And I like how the ramifications were thought about and were dealt with in a logical way. That if you are going to mess with the timescale of a book, um, for pacing reasons for a film, or because translating the book to screen, it's a different thing. That if you pay attention to that and deal with it, you go, yeah, fine. The one thing like I always get annoyed is, oh, the screenplay writer thought they were a better writer than the novelist.
Yeah.
Very few novelists are good screenplay writers, and not all screenplay writers are good novelists. They're different media. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and what is in the book, you cannot just lick the page and stick to the screen. A lot of times, you have to make changes, and it's
Right.
not because, oh well, I think I'm better. It's this is how we get this to work consistently, and it's how that reader, because they have read the book, it's how that reader now imagines how they are going to tell their version of the story.
Yeah.
And it's not an assumption that, oh well, that guy's just an idiot, I can do better. If that's what they thought, they'd write a novel. They're not. They're making a film, and it's a different medium.
Yeah.
um
And man, just to see sandworms like that, coming toward an army of dudes who are like, and running the other
Run
way,
away, run
just
away.
run away, run away. I mean, just visually stunning, an amazing film, quite an achievement, really. So
the the brave Sardukar. No, in their defense, like people going, oh, the Sardukar should have fought them. You're like, this thing is
yeah,
enormous. It's put him up. Oh, I'm gonna. You're like, no, the Sardukar aren't stupid.
right.
They can't fight them.
No,
Therefore, any soldier knows, oh, well, I should just stand my ground and get flattened by this giant space worm. You're like, no, they're not stupid. They're warriors. And you go, if you can't fight it, run away, regroup, and then attack.
Yeah, you don't
But
want to be worm poop. No. So, but yeah, no, it was a really visually amazing. And in the end, I think really great storytelling too. So I enjoyed it thoroughly. And I will certainly be out there watching whatever Villeneuve comes up with next. Yeah.
and I sincerely hope he adapts Dune Messiah, because I think that would be the capstone for Paul's story, really, as you can see it as a set piece. Yeah, Paul is in Children of Dune, but
Hmm.
that's not really focused on Paul. This Dune and Dune Messiah is sort of Paul's arc, and then we start a new arc with Children of Dune.
Hmm.
So it'd be interesting to get Dune Messiah adapted, because if Villeneuve does that, I think he has set all of the pieces in motion for he's emphasized the right themes, he's emphasized the right players, he's emphasized the politics, and he can actually now bring in elements, like the Spacing Guild. We didn't get to see guild
The
navigators.
Spice Guild, yeah, is almost non-existent in the film. And that I wouldn't have minded seeing a little more of. I understand their constraints and they're
Yeah.
trying to condense and everything, but yeah.
And then also bringing in the Talaxu. Like there are some really cool things that can be brought in to expand this fantastic universe that Herbert built. That, yeah, over time Herbert built out and showed us. And of course, Brian Herbert, and who's the other author?
I don't remember, but I hope that Villeneuve does not go all the way to Brian Herbert books to adapt them into films. But
They get an awful hard rap. Is it Kevin J. Anderson is the other author?
maybe.
I honestly can't remember. I feel really bad now. It slipped my mind. They they are different, and they focus on different things. They don't have the same vision that Frank Herbert did, which
Uh-huh.
obviously they can't. They're different people. They're
Right.
catering to a different audience. They're expanding it in different directions that don't necessarily always agree. But then again, when we look at the original Dune series as written by Frank Herbert, it's a bit out there. And you know, when you start filling in gaps and you start realizing some of the inconsistencies that are in this, because it was such a flippant aside, and now to make that work, you're like, how do I get this to fit now? The,
Well, that's a thing about speculative fiction writers who keep writing over a long period of their lives in the same world. They sometimes come up with little contradictory things here and there, you know? So
is that why your next Dan book has everyone's actually dinosaurs? You just retconned the whole world. Actually, Day Raven and everyone, they were never humans in the first place. They're all dinosaurs.
with laser eyes. Yeah.
Well, my friend, thank you very much for having this chat with me.
Oh, this was fun. This was fun. I got to chat with you. I got to relive the film. This was a blast. So yeah.
And for those of you still watching, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for your continued support, and I'll see you in the next one.